Good morning and very happy Friday morning to all of our viewers and our listeners. Of course, there are some people who listen, they're driving, so they don't look, they listen, being very obedient students of the road and persons who want to ensure that they adhere to the traffic regulations. And of course, being mindful of your safety on the road as well. Thank you for tuning in this morning. We have a very interesting program lined up for you today. Lots of information to be shared. So just ensure that you um, invite your friends and your relatives. As we would say, get them to rock and come in because we are sailing this morning. The temperature here in New York City today is, at least for right now, it's 52 degrees, a little chilly outside, not much, but it gives one the indication that it's going to be really hot today. Of course, we are slipping into the summer season. So, what do you expect? No rain in the forecast, as far as I know today. Lots of sunshine here. I'm not sure what the temperature is in Guyana at the moment, but I can certainly check it out. Well, so that you can be aware of the temperature in a GT. It says here that the temperature in Guyana right now is 81 degrees, hot 81 degrees. Today we're talking about the temperature there. We want to ensure that we're able to enjoy the temperature, comfortable temperature. We want to ensure that we have the nice wind blowing all the time. We want to ensure that we have the nice trees and the vegetation and the animal life, flora and fauna. We want to protect it in Guyana for future generations. So, um, we this morning going to be looking at some issues that will help us to ensure that that is done. We have a very special guest this morning, and I was a little late. Well, I was plenty late, so I don't want to keep this honorable gentleman, this well-known, distinguished gentleman, waiting much longer. So I'd like to say welcome and good morning. Welcome to the show to Dr. Vincent Adams, a Lindoner, of course, and somebody who we ought to be proud of and we ought to be holding in high esteem. Doc, good morning and welcome to the In Perspective Show.
Good morning, Branford. Just glad to be here, and thanks for having me. It's always, I guess, an honor and a privilege to be able to comment on these forums and share my views and with the audience here.
Thank you very much, and I'm very well aware of the fact that we caused you to wake yourself very early, wake yourself up very early
That's
this
right.
morning to come on. So
All
you
the
are
way, all the way in Tennessee too. I'm not in the New York area, but yeah, we're having some nice weather here too. Probably, you're not 81 degrees, but pretty comfortable.
well. I'm envious of you right now. Thank you for coming on. You're the music
That's
state
right.
to me. Want to thank you
Yeah,
very much for making
that's
yourself
exactly
available. And for those who are from Linden, I think you should be feeling very proud this morning that you have one of your boys on. Doc, just to get a little perspective, we want to talk some serious business today, but I want to start on the light side. I understand that you know how to hit a ball and weave a ball well. I understand you have a little button ball in your background.
right. Yeah, good. It's been so long that it's kind of difficult to remember these days. But yes, I came from a place called Christianburg. Not a whole lot of people know or even heard about Christianburg. Even people in Guyana. But Christianburg, Linden, it has a river that passes through. You had Mackenzie, and you had Wismar and Christianburg on the other side. So I came from the Christianburg end, and people would normally tease us and ridicule us, saying the only thing that was valuable in Christianburg was the cemetery. Where all it didn't matter where you came from, you had to be buried in the cemetery. Yeah, but I grew up in the alleys of Christianburg, and I actually became the first youngster to play cricket for Guyana, both of the under 19 um, team and on the senior national team for Guyana. While I was a teenager, and then unfortunately I got into an automobile accident, and
Oh,
my life just changed, and my career changed, and that's how I switched academics and became who I am today. But you know, no regrets whatsoever. But
well,
I tell you what, I have to tell and that's why a lot of people ask me, why do I do this? I used to go back even when I was before I retired. I would go back. I was head of the Linden Fund USA for what 12 years, and we have these charitable programs, etc. One of the biggest hometown associations.
mm,
And so I would be back home in Guyana 3, 4, 5 times a year. Especially all my vacation was spent in Guyana, going back to Linden, taking teachers workshops and medical missions and granting scholarships to kids. The Linden Fund still exists, but I'm no longer head of it. But yes, and the reason why I did it is because everything I got out of Linden, it was that village that raised me. And
mm,
I just take it as an obligation for me to give back. As a matter of fact, that was the reason why I came back again after retirement and
mm,
accepted the position at EPA, was really to give back to my country. And I will continue to do that when COVID is over, obviously. So Linden, I'm not gone from Linden or from Guyana. I'll still maintain my strong connection. That's where, my navel string was cut.
mm.
And so yes, that's my home.
Definitely, and we're grateful to you for what you've done for Linden and for Guyana. Either way, cricket wise, I mean sports wise, and
Yeah.
in the field of academics. And as you did allude to earlier, you were most recently the head of the EPA, that's the Environmental Protection Agency in Guyana.
Yes.
And my research has informed me that the EPA exists under the act, in the laws of Guyana under chapter 2005 uh, in the laws of Guyana. And so most people will tell you about the EPA and we don't have a clue of what the
Yeah.
EPA is really about, what it does. What are some of or what are really the overarching responsibilities of the EPA in Guyana?
You know, and you're right, and I think that even when I was in that position, it was kind of surprising that a lot of people didn't know what the EPA did, and a lot of the fault was because of the EPA was in terms of how it operated. Um, it was obviously very political to start with. But the EPA, and I was always reminded by Rod Henson, the head, the country manager, the head guy for Exxon Mobil. I was always reminded by him. He tells me, he said, the EPA is the most important agency in Guyana, and the EPA has to permit every single operation in Guyana, from hotels, road construction, of course, oil and gas. Anything that you do, the EPA even have to give permits to government agencies,
Mm,
um, especially Ministry of Infrastructure, Health. They're doing things that require permitting, etc. Yeah, but the EPA it overrides all of the operations in Guyana and mining, for example, the bauxite or gold and diamond. But the main aim of the EPA is to protect the environment,
mm,
basically, and and to make sure that if there are violations of the law allows for enforcement actions against violators. And the other important thing is that the EPA, if with that background, the EPA was set up, as a matter of fact, as a consequence of what happened with the OMI spill going back in the 90s.
mm,
And it was because of that spill, there was that was seen as a necessity to have such an agency. And the agency was set up in 1996. The problem that faces the agency right now, though, is one of the challenges is, which is one of the things that I had as a very, very high priority when I arrived there. The act was written in 1996, which means that it's what is it, 25 years old now,
Mm.
and it doesn't have a word that says petroleum or oil and gas, which means so now the entire economy is going to be grounded in oil and gas. I made it my top priority, one of my top priority, to make sure that it's revised. Not that you can't handle the oil and gas in terms of making some broad interpretations, etc. But it was not, it definitely it was, it's out of date, and now, unfortunately, I'm hearing that has been put in the back burner since I left. But again, that's getting back again to where the EPA is not, its role and its importance has not been recognized. I don't know if it's just because people are unaware of the importance of such an institution. The EPA, even when I arrived at EPA, it's let me just to show you how the attention or the lack thereof that was paid to the EPA. When I arrived, one of the first questions that I asked, I said, well, okay, what type of, how many authorizations or permits do we have out there? And I heard all kinds of numbers. We did not have, believe it or not. Here are people who coming in to get permits to do their activities, and this should be formal. We did not have any type of document control system, meaning there was no, people would come in, do an application for a permit, and the permit would sit there in somebody's drawers or something, and the permittee now would go out and assume that they've done all the numbers, they've done everything that they've done, and they would go and start up their operation. So when I got there, I said, well, okay, here's my vision in terms of how we move this agency forward. And here I would like to, matter of fact, my vision was to make the EPA the model agency of the nation to follow. So I set my vision, and here's how I'm going to get there. But then we got to do the routine things of permitting. Well, there was nothing to go back to in terms of tracing documents and that type of stuff. So when I looked at it, we had over 500 permits that were out, had expired. Nobody knows they were operating at risk, and we weren't paying attention. We weren't going out there and monitoring, etc. And when I started asking what was and some of them had expired for over 10, 15 years.
Wow.
And when we started investigating, so I said, okay, all hands on deck now to clean up, get everything back in place. We're going to set up an entire registry or a document control center, which we did, which was probably one of the biggest, because that's the guts of the agency. But these 500 permits, over 500 permits that were there, so within a year, we went out there and we collected about $150 million.
Wow.
In back, in back fees, etc., that was owed for those operations. Well, the EPA, one of the reasons why, you ask the officers, well, how did these things expire? Nobody goes out there for monitoring. And the one common thing you hear all the time, well, we don't have tools to get out there. We don't have equipment. We don't have vehicles. The entire EPA to monitor the entire country, we had, I like to say, 1.5 vehicle, roadworthy vehicle. Well, when I left there, guess what? We had close to 10 new brand pickups and vehicles, close to 10, without asking for an extra dime from the Treasury, because we used $150 million or so that we collected to purchase these vehicles and to purchase equipment so that you go out there and monitor and measure. The other thing is, the first thing I asked the staff, I said, what are some of the challenges? And you hear from everybody, well, which is getting back to your question, that nobody recognized the importance. Said that everybody, people don't recognize the EPA as anybody. We're just a toothless tiger. Everybody take guys and pass us. They go and they do whatever they want to do. And on top of that, now, even if we decide to go make a decision, some politicians is gonna call and say, hey, or this sport is somebody's friend in politics. They call and say, hey, this is the way you ought to do it, and you just go and you just follow their instruction instead of doing what you're supposed to be doing. So we had no control of the agency. Of course, the time I was there, that completely got turned around.
Mm.
We, one of the things that everybody had to basically repeat every day, that we're customer focused and the customer pay our salaries, because that's the other thing. That's a culture we have in Guyana, where, especially as government employees, we all believe that we're doing the public a favor.
Yeah.
So I make it very clear, no, the public, they're the ones who are paying your salary. You're going to provide that service. We set up a 24-hour hotline where people can call in. They have issues. We've got to address it within 24 hours.
Mm.
Um, so it's a was a customer focused type of organization. People come in with an application instead of sitting there for years, and you can't even find it after a while. Now we set up a system and a process where they've got to respond within a certain time, where we have to have the permit done, etc. So the entire culture was changed, but at the same time we had to build capacity.
Right.
An EPA, an agency such as the EPA, it has to be grounded in strong science and engineering, because remember, you're dealing with people's health and environment. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we did not have a single engineer. We did not have any strong scientists in chemistry and physics and those type of things. And like the University of Ghana, for example, a lot of the people who were being hired had this program that is called environmental studies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mean
Yes.
no science. So I had to change all of that. As a matter of fact, I had some very productive conversations with the university that I was also attached to, and so that's, I don't know how far we've gone. Of course, COVID got into mix here, but so we've changed. Hopefully we're gonna get beyond that. But when I was there, I also set up a capacity building program where the EPA will be sponsoring people to go to university to do strong science and engineering. Of course, you got to sign a contract to come back and work with the agency. Um, I joined a whole bunch of international professional organizations,
Hmm.
started so that people can network and go to conferences, international conferences, because that's where you learn a lot of stuff. Send people to even to the United States, because of course that's where my background is. To companies in the United States, I had like what three of my employees went to a place in Florida. One of the companies that are going to be operating in Guyana, to see because everything, this whole oil industry is new. So, send them there to be exposed to what exactly they're doing here in the United States, how they're developing the science, how the chemistry, all the chemicals that they're dealing with, and how they're dealing with these chemicals as a hazard. Yeah, they were up there for what, 2 weeks or so, and that's the kind of program that I set up. Of course, the COVID um, came up, and that caused some issues in terms of delaying everything. The budget, I almost was tripling the budget to make sure we have our own laboratory and we have proper equipment. We did not have any equipment that could go there and measure. As a matter of fact, we had old equipment, and we were going out there. They weren't properly calibrated, and people were going. I said absolutely not. I said, if you got to throw it in the garbage, that's where it's gonna go, and we're gonna have to get new equipment, because when we're playing with people's health, we got to have accurate measurement. We've got to People have got to understand, what they're measuring, etc. So we regulations, for example, we really didn't have a whole lot of standardized regulations, and how do you approach making decisions and evaluation. So, we had like setting up standards and protocols to follow to do your evaluation. So so that's some of the things. When I left on my desk, I think I had like 17 draft standards and how to move forward. I don't know what happened to it. And then of course is holding the operators accountable. Of course, on our side, we have to be good customers, but at the same time they've got the responsibility to carry out their responsibility in a responsible manner. And if you don't, you'll be held accountable. And
Mm-hmm.
that nobody's bigger than the law. I don't know if you recall when right as soon as I arrived there, I got into to battle with this one of the big international mining companies, and we basically shut them down,
Hmm.
which was a shock to everybody that how that these things never happen. Then of course with Exxon, we started fine. We had never levied any fine against anybody before I arrived. And within the year and a half to 2 years that I was there, I think we collected like over $10 million in fines.
Shoo.
And it could have been much more because it so happened that the limit on any fine was $1 million. A million Guyana dollars, by the way.
Right.
So it was kind of petty cash for some folks. The cost of doing business was very little. So those are the kinds of things that we were even changing, that this maximum $1 million fine, which is just a slap on the wrist. Those were some of the things that was in the act that were outdated and needed to be changed, that we were working on. I hired a lawyer who was specially assigned to doing that. But now my understanding is that all has been changed. But I mean, it's something that we all should advocate for as every single citizen, because the EPA, again, getting back to its importance, the EPA, like Rod Henson, the head guy for Exxon, used to tell me all the time, it's the most important agency in Guyana because it protects the health, safety, and the environment of the people. We might be taking it for granted that somehow we've got good air and maybe good water. Well, you should go up in the rivers to see what's happening with the rivers in the mining area. Those are the things why the EPA was set up. But politics, the one thing that should not happen, which is my biggest fear, is the politics getting involved, and people, ministers and people with political influence calling in and influencing the officers. All of that had stopped completely when I was there. That was a total guarantee. So I changed that entire culture, which was probably one of the most important things that I did there. And so people were all fired up. The morale was very high because I started. I hired like 20 new people. For years the agency was running at about 97 folks, and even though there was an audit done in 2015, an independent audit that says that they were supposed to have like 263 people.
Hmm.
Now this is 2015. When I arrived, it was the same 97 that they had in 2015 that we had in when I arrived there in 2018. So immediately I started upping the staff and getting really qualified people in science and engineering, etc. And my vision for last year was to double the staff in for last year. Of course, COVID came on board, and then for this year, the thing was to go ahead and triple the staff. And even then, because even with the 260 something that was counted, oil and gas was not accounted for because this was even before oil and gas was there.
Right.
So another big thing is that when oil and gas came online, I got the World Bank involved and had the World Bank, built a relationship with the World Bank, and they sponsored, give us some money and worked with us they sent in an export or a couple of exports, and we developed an oil and gas unit, a 36-member unit with highly skilled people in petroleum engineers, etc. Because we had not a single person on staff had any idea of petroleum except for myself. So I used to be doing the technical work while I'm bringing, and doing everything else. So that was one of the big missions there, to set up that 36-man unit. Here again, that was my highest priority. Again, I hadn't heard anything. I think that's also might be on hold. I
Wow.
my intention was to have. I said it all the time. We must have 24 hours monitoring on every single ship that is out in the ocean. It's the only way that you're going to know exactly what's going on. And so that was on, that was another really focus of mine, is to make sure that we've got 24/7 coverage. Because right now, you guys in the news media, I get complaints all the time how frustrating it is that Exxon is not, not freely releasing and information and releasing it accurately, etc. And EPA not returning calls and all this kind of stuff. But the thing is, we have to have 24/7. That's the way we, Of course, I grew up with the United States Department of Energy, where I worked for 30 something years at the highest
Mm-hmm.
level, and that's the way we operated here. And the one thing that I told all Exxon and all these folks, we will not accept anything less than what they've got to abide with in countries such as the United States. So that was the standard. I don't care. You come and tell me we don't have regulations that are matured. Yes, we do. If we don't have, you're going to use those that you've got to abide with, that we did all the research on, then we're safe. You're not going to do anything less than what you're required to do. And so that was my basic standard. And I guess I even had the gumption to even take Exxon to court when they were refusing to pay a fine, and I took them to court. Well, that's the other thing I heard when I left. That also was shelved. The case was either withdrawn or just shelved. So those are the kinds of things that I'm concerned about in terms of moving things forward and developing the agency and recognizing the importance of the agency. We have, like I said before, initially we did not know how many operations we were overseeing. When we got down to organizing and counting, we have over 2,000 operations. Over 2,000 operations, because everything passes through the EPA. Over 2,000 operations. But we've got to we've got to make sure that the agency is properly funded. We have to make sure we build the capacity with the right staff,
Mm-hmm.
and to give them the equipment and the tools for them to go there. We're protecting people's health, safety, and the environment. We cannot wait. We're
Yeah.
fortunate right now that Guyana is a very young country. We're young in this industry, but it's not only oil and gas. A lot of stuff is going to start to be introduced as on the periphery of this oil and gas. Lots of chemicals are coming, hazardous waste, even nuclear stuff.
Hmm.
Nuclear materials and nuclear equipment, etc. So we have to have people who are trained and to understand those hazards to deal with them. And rather than wait on the back end until it's out of control, and we can't turn it around. When I was working with the United States, we had to deal with when the Soviet, when the wall came down. We didn't know what was behind the wall, the German wall, in
Right.
the Eastern Bloc countries.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to get involved. I mean, the rivers were like sewers, and I mean, because there weren't any kind of environmental laws and regulations in those countries.
Hmm.
But whatever happened in those countries, especially in the air and water and stuff, it doesn't stay, pollution doesn't see boundaries or doesn't see
Exactly.
borders, doesn't see politics, you know. But so yeah, but EPA is, like I said, I believe the most important agency in America, because our health is more important than anything else. Anything else. And we should never compromise, money or economics for people's health, safety, and the environment. Never. Uh,
I certainly agree with you there. And you mentioned standards. I'd be happy if you can. I know you've indicated to us that quite a number of things, based on your information, have changed since this new administration took office. But from your vantage point, what standards do we hold the oil mining giants to in ensuring that we don't suffer as a result of any of the potential disasters that could occur stemming from their mining activities? My mind goes back to exactly what you said earlier about the EPA being created as a result of the Omai disaster. What standards are we holding Exxon, for example, to ensure that Guyanese do not suffer as a result of any potential disaster, whether it be nuclear or whatever that could result from the mining.
Yeah, Bradford, you touch obviously touch on one of my pet peeves, and one of the touching the hottest topics of over the past year or so. As a matter of fact, since I was there, couple of them. Like I said, the EPA protects air,
Hmm.
water, of course, soil, the environment at large. Air, flaring.
Hmm.
You know that the EPA, not the EPA, Exxon continues to flare illegally. By the way, illegally. I don't care what they say. It's and I'm very disappointed that this administration here is seems to be going along with this kind of nonsense. Um, but from day one, Exxon had even said, "Hey, you know what? Day one, we will not flare." Me and flare. By the way, let me go back to what flaring is.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that.
When you produce oil,
Hmm.
you produce comes up with the oil. Water comes up with the oil. Very, very, very polluted water with high brine. I mean, the seawater. This water that comes up with the oil is even saltier than the seawater. In some cases, it's 5-10 times more salty than it could even
Sure.
come up with radioactive material. It come up with all kinds of mercury, lead, just name it, barium, everything. It come the water. That's the water. The gas now, the gas also is highly polluted. It's like over 250 contaminants. So the oil comes up. It says not only oil, it comes up with
Mm.
a lot of gas and a lot of water. For example, in this particular reservoir in Liza 1, for every barrel of oil that comes up, there are 10,000 cubic feet. I mean, a lot, very, very, it's a very large volume. 10,000 cubic feet of gas comes up with it. So now the plan is what was approved by the government was that all the gas that comes up will be re-injected back into the reservoir. It's a standard practice,
Mhm.
which means that you're not polluting the environment, but it also helps in enhancing the recovery. It keeps the pressure in the reservoir up, so you enhance the recovery. It's a standard practice. Well, when Exxon, that was the arrangement. Exxon said, "Hey, from day one, we don't worry. We from day one there will be no flaring. Flaring is always a concern, by the way, all over the world. Matter of
Hmm.
fact, it's even Exxon now and all the companies they've made a commitment. The World Bank, the governments they've made a commitment that flaring they want to zero out flaring by 2030 or something or 2050. But flaring is bad for the environment. So what happened is the new ship comes in, the FPSO comes on. The FPSO is a ship, the drill ship in
Right.
its operation. It comes on board and the equipment is not working. So flaring starts now, meaning that all this gas, instead of re-injecting now, it's flaring, it's going up into the skies, which means it's polluting the hell out of the environment.
Wow.
And it's violating the law. The permit says, it is clear as crystal. The permit says you cannot flare, period. All gas has to be injected back into the reservoir. Now, of course, if you can't, if the equipment cannot re-inject it back, then you gotta flare it. Then you can't produce. No, if you can't flare it, you cannot produce any oil. So now it
Oh.
becomes a decision between economics and polluting the environment. Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is where the EPA has to come in and say, no, you cannot violate the laws of the land. You cannot produce any oil. If you're gonna pollute the environment, nobody has it. I don't have any problem with oil production. I'm not one of those who say you can't produce oil. That's that's the extreme. But
Hmm.
what I say, as a matter of fact, I'm all for development. Like I said, my entire career was built, in the United States, you know, capitalist country and free market economy, etc. So I encourage and welcome oil production to gain revenue, but you cannot do it at the expense of people's health and the environment. So they've been doing. So they begged. They say, well, okay, let's work with you, EP, and the Department of Energy. Give us 30 days. We're gonna fix this equipment. There were some thing, with valves and seals, which was kind of shocking. That for a new brand ship, from an Exxon standpoint that was built, they should have the best in the world. 30 days pass, same thing. 60 days, 90 days. I said, hey, this is enough. So what basically we did at EPA, I said, no, you got to shut back. So you shut back operations to a safe limit, which was from 100, at the time they were operating 100,000 barrels per day of oil, shut them down to the safe operating level, but 30,000 barrels per day while they fix it. Well, they fixed it, and then within months, right after I left, here it goes again. And then the thing that really bothers me, here it goes again. They've got to send equipment all the way to Germany and all this kind of stuff. And then they come back now. And now they're flaring at maximum capacity. They're producing now at 120,000 barrels per day oil, which is the nameplate capacity. That's the maximum they can operate.
Mm-hmm.
And they're flaring all of this gas. Also, all of the gas is coming. They're flaring this stuff. And then, well, of course, I have been in the media over it, and I'm questioning it and saying how illegal it is. But then you have the government coming out and backing them, and even peddling the lies, saying, well, that as a matter of fact, they were saying that somehow in the permit it was written there that they had a 14 billion cubic feet cap. And here, and I'm making a whole lot of noise, but here, which was a blatant lie. What was kind of funny. So Exxon now had a press conference to bring the press up to date. And the first thing out of Exxon's mouth was here, I didn't know where the government got this 14 billion from. I didn't have anything to do. So that was the funniest part. It threw them under the bus. But my point is, matter of fact, it even came up in Parliament. And the minister got into a big argument with the minister in the opposition, David Patterson, and the rest of them. You guys are, talking, and Dr. Adams is saying this and that. And somehow he signed off to this 14 billion cap. I mean, they were, and then, so now when they got caught, I don't know if I guess you can just say it was just pure ignorance. But but to me, it was irresponsible, first of all, to be repeating this lie instead of going and saying, well, hey, something? This here first of all, it's not healthy for the environment. And it's against the law because any little kid could read. It's not a case where it's left for interpretation. It says, thou shalt not flare, period. And when we did the analysis, the safety analysis to set that standard in the permit, it says this specifically in the analysis that they looked at three options. Is either you flare the gas totally, you re-inject the gas, or you export the gas, meaning you send it like what we're doing right now by pipeline for commercial use. The one thing that was just completely rejected was the flaring. So flaring was crossed out completely. We're not going to do that. So flaring. Now water dumping. I talk about the gas that comes up with oil. Now there's water now. So when I was there, as one of the conditions, I said here, you're not going to dump water into the ocean because that's the plan. It's cheaper. So we had a big fight, and I said, no, you will not get authorization as long as I'm here to be dumping water. It cost them like $300 million to put in the equipment, and that's what they were, didn't want to do. They thought coming up with all kinds of nonsense where it's gonna plug up the reservoir because it's mixing. Any common sense person, the water is coming from the reservoir. It's either you inject it back in or you bring in water from the ocean. Now bringing it from the ocean is much easier. So rather than putting the same water back into the reservoir. So they're saying, well, if you put the same water back into the reservoir, that's going to scale up the reservoir. But if you put seawater into the reservoir, it's not going to scale it up. Now, does that make sense? You don't even have to know chemistry to know that if you put something back to where it came from, it's going to be better than putting a foreign liquid into it.
Yes, to
But
replace it.
nevertheless, I said, well, okay, show me the technical analysis, chemistry and everything else. They came back with a report, with all kinds of fancy coloring and everything, a fancy chart to bamboozle people. But of course, they're not going to bamboozle me. So I told them basically where it belonged, you
Hmm.
know, probably in some trash can someplace because it was totally worthless. Went out there and just, cut and paste from textbooks and theoretical stuff. I wanted to see actual measurements of the water
Right.
there. Well, that was one anyway, so I rejected it completely. When I left there, it so happened, and then the new government brought in the consultant from Canada, etc. So, I was in charge of reviewing these issues, all the major issues, the water dumping, the flaring, etc. And then there were a few other things. They all agreed with me. This was the shocking part. Even the consultant from Canada, before we had the meeting with Exxon, we had to have our internal meeting. We all 110%. Everybody said we met with Exxon. Say here, this is what it's going to be. Period. You got to abide with it. You got to put in equipment. And lo and behold, that was my position. I wasn't going to sign off on the permit or on the document that the DOE signs to move forward, the field development plan. I said absolutely not until you meet these conditions.
Hmm.
And, and when after I left, I guess just a week or two afterwards, we signed off. So Exxon got its way. So
Wow.
now, so those are the kinds of things that bothers me that it's just again, the people who are really interested in protecting the health, safety, and the environment. Again, getting back to the importance of the EPA.
Hmm.
EPA has to be allowed to do its job and do it in an independent manner, um, grounded in some technical analysis, to protect the health, safety, and the environment. And that's my biggest fear because there's no question that after I left, all of that has been changed. And I thought that at least we'd gone a far way in inculcating that culture with the staff, and the staff love it. I mean, every professional um, would love it. So one of the biggest things too, well, I forgot to tell you, one of the biggest accomplishments too was insurance.
I,
So
I I had that question down to ask
yeah,
what,
well,
if we have insurance, if we
well,
demand that they have insurance to take
that's
care of a
another
spill or
that's
so.
another big issue because of course. So when I got there now, and it was Lisa two, and so Lisa two time, and so we said here, um, we're gonna need in insurance to cover well the agreement that was signed by the previous administration.
Mhm.
It allows them to be self-insured, basically. Say, you have to, as long as you can provide, I guess the confidence in the government that you've got insurance. Well, so when they came in with the permit, I said, wait a minute here. You know, you can't you can't tell me where is your coverage. Well, it's self-insure. I said, who's going to self-insure? Here's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people say, even I get caught up in it sometimes, that says ExxonMobil. It's not ExxonMobil. It's a limited, and the operative word is limited liability
Liability
corporation
company.
that is
Okay,
made up
okay.
of ExxonMobil, Sinop, I think the Chinese company, I could never pronounce the name, and Hess.
Right.
So it's not, but now ExxonMobil is the man is the man they're managing it, but it's EEPGL. They have no assets. It's a new
Oh,
brand company. Well,
wow.
I've been used to dealing with it because that's what companies do all the time. You set up these limited liability corporations to shed your liabilities.
Mm.
So if anything happens, though, guess what? ExxonMobil is free. Hess is not liable, and the other company, they're not liable. EPGL has no assets to cover anything. So I said, wait a minute, this can't work.
Hmm.
You need to show proof that you can cover if we've got a spill out there. So they went out after pushing back heavily. as to what was in the agreement. I said, okay, that agreement, this here, as far as I'm concerned, supersedes any agreement. This is the law of the land. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, they went out there. They got, I think, the maximum insurance that could be had was like 2.5 billion. Of course, they thought, well, we've hit the jackpot here. We're gonna get our stuff signed off. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even it was the yellowtail whale. Yeah, I remember that. So I had the permit sitting on my desk for months. I said, I'm not signing off. Anyway, they 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 came back with a 2.5 bill. I said, when did you check to see what British Petroleum is costing them in the Gulf, the Macondo spill? They're running close to 70 billion US dollars. So what happens when that 2.5 billion dollars is a drop in the bucket to 70 billion if you've got a major spill? What is going to happen? Guyana can't cover 70 billion dollars. We'll be bankrupt. Not to mention the lawsuits we'll be getting from Trinidad and Venezuela and
Exactly.
all the entire Caribbean. I said, so this can't work. Well, they're saying, well, what are we gonna do? And they threaten all kinds. I say, hey, something? I don't have anything to lose. It's sitting here. It's your interest. But the other thing is, just to divert a bit, the one thing that I can always say, the coalition government never interfered with anything that I did when I was a TP. Never. Nobody ever called me. All this kind of stuff, it used to be in the media, and with this fight with corporates, nobody, Mr. Granger, the ministers, Mr. Harmon, who was my minister, never called me one day to say, you know what, you need
You basically had a free reign.
absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, so I said the only thing that is going to work here is you got to have an agreement so that the all liabilities over and above the 2.5 billion has to go back to your corporate office. ExxonMobil, they've got deep pockets. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they've got deep pockets. The Chinese company, that's the only way I'm going to sign off. So they decided after dragging them, they decided they had no other option because I was not going to sign off anything for them to produce. And I know, hell, I know the leverage that we have, regardless of what people, that, and we tend to let this thing appear as if they're doing us a favor. We're doing Exxon. They're not doing us a favor. They need us more than we need them. But anyway, we decided I was going to go ahead and sign up on the conditions, and we put the conditions in the permit. Well, of course, when we sign off on Lisa 2, we signed off on Lisa 2 in 2019, and Lisa 2 was not going to be operating until 2022 or something. So I said, okay. They said, well, okay, give us an opportunity so that they three companies could get together to figure out how they could guarantee this insurance. I said, fine, because I know they're not going to operate until 2022. We've got enough time. If they don't do it, then they can't operate. So they went. We had several meetings with them. They met. We had back and forth. And lo and behold, now I'm hearing now that that's also one of the things that, because like that, that came up again even in the when we were doing the Payara arrangement that I was talking about the water dumping and stuff that I wasn't signing off on. So we were also looking at the Lisa 2 with the insurance, not to sign off for them to start operating on the insurance, to change the permit, etc. Well, now I'm also hearing, that also has been put on the back burner as far as holding them, accountable to make sure that putting their feet to the fire to make sure that they bring this agreement to the EPA, because we should not allow them, we should not sign off on Lisa 2 starting until they bring that agreement and give it to the EPA, which is the condition that is written into the permit. The same condition also is written into the Payara. But I have a feeling that it's just going to go unnoticed and people are going to turn a blind eye. But that's something that's very important, that we have to have insurance. It's not even insurance; it's assurance. It's assurance company that the parent company and not EPGL has to cover. We have to have that agreement. We have to.
I certainly agree, because what I'm observing is that, like you did allude to just now, if there should be a spill, Guyana in no way, shape, or form can
No,
deal with that. I want to jump back to something that you mentioned earlier in terms of the pollution of the atmosphere by these chemicals that are given off from gases.
yeah.
What side effects can be experienced by the
Oh,
environment, the population, the flora, fauna, if
oh, you can.
this is
Well,
allowed to go on?
first, first of all, even a lot of this stuff is carcinogenic. So
Oh my.
yeah, because you breathe, you get um, it goes into your lungs. You got all kinds of chemicals in, lead, like I said, mercury. You got like 250 contaminants, and you can, it's also a lot of it is with cooking gas, methane, and those
Mhm.
type of things. But you've got these impurities that are in that gas. So when you just go and that's why we the entire international community and now the United States with even Biden, flaring and that kind of stuff, they're going to be pushing it. But here's another most egregious thing that really it really angered me. As a matter of fact, going through this review for the Payaro, Exxon's justification, Exxon's justification for wanting to flare in Guyana is, guess what it is? They're saying because Guyana is a carbon sink, meaning that we're basically a pure, our air is pristine. So because our air is pristine, we've got the capacity to accommodate pollutants. Where at the same time, by the way, the same Exxon now was made the commitment to cut back on flaring because they're forced, obviously, cut back on flaring by close to 50% by 2030. So now you're making a commitment to the rest of the world to cut back on your flaring. But Guyana, guess what? You know what? Heck, you guys are, you got pure air, you got the capacity to absorb more pollutants. It doesn't matter. You know, you've got a capacity. We want to dump here in Guyana, but clean up the rest of the world. So
Hmm.
those are the kind of things that tells me, is this a company that we should be trusting? Um, and especially when they're spreading false information out there, denying that they're not in violation of the laws of the land when the permit clearly says you cannot flare, and you flare, and then the thing is that the government who's supposed to be protecting us is siding with you to come up with all kinds of excuses to say, well, Exxon is looking into it. For how long are they going to look into it? Up to now, they still can't repair the equipment. Well, now eventually I heard that they cut back. They had to cut back because they were forced to, because they can't operate the equipment. Even though they took it to Germany and bring it back, the equipment is still not functioning.
Hmm.
So, but here's the other big question that I asked even Exxon when I was there, and nobody cannot give me an answer. You guys need to keep asking. Why is it Exxon have these ships operating all over the world? Why is it this is only happening in Guyana?
Hmm.
New brand equipment. Why is it you are only you're only flaring or being allowed to flare the way you are in Guyana? Your equipment is malfunctioning only in Guyana when you've had you've got a bunch of these ships all over the world. This is supposed to be your newest among your newest ship, but you're telling me your equipment is not working here. You want to flare, but it's not happening in any other part of the world. Why is it this is the only place it's happening?
That exact question occurred to me a minute ago, and one of the things that that occurred to me at the same time was the fact that this is supposed to be one of the largest reservoirs of oil in if not the world, in this hemisphere, or in that hemisphere. So, why would you bring, as we would say in Guyana, a broken down ship to service the country with supposedly the largest oil reservoir or reserve in the hemisphere?
Well, I don't think it's a broke down ship. What happened is, again, I was so fortunate to have been working at a level, that I worked at the United States government, where the standards were very high, and these companies had to comply. They didn't have any choice. When we say jump, they ask how high. In
Hmm.
Guyana, it's the reverse. They tell the government to jump high however they want the government to jump. and we obey. We still have a lot of this colonial mentality. Trust me. So it's not the broken down ship. One of the things that I demanded of them to, because one is like when you're making these critical equipment, there's something called a quality assurance, quality control plan that you have to,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how you manufacture, down to the welding, down to the material, even the material smelting of the material itself, the type of carbon steel you use, the type of stainless steel, etc. Their quality, I guarantee you, their quality assurance plan was poor. They were not, so they handed out a contract. People bid, they probably give it to the lowest bidder. I don't know, but so the bidders there, but you've got to go there and even oversee what the bidder, how it's being manufactured.
Right,
You
right.
can't come back and tell me it's not the first time you manufacture this equipment. The first thing when it was installed, the equipment, this you wouldn't believe they came to the meeting, the first meeting, and said, "Well, the problem is they hook up the wiring wrong." Now this is Exxon. I mean, that's exactly what I did. I laughed. This is Exxon. They hooked up the wiring wrong. Okay, so then the next thing you know, the seals are bad. Well, you should have known that before. You've got top scientists in the world. They should have known well what material you need for the seals, etc. You remember we had a seal issue. Seal should have been the top of everybody. You remember when which one of the ships blew up going into space? Challenger or something. You remember it was the seal.
Yes, right, 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 right.
So we all should be sensitive to seal. So they've got a seal. The material is bad. So they're gonna fix that. Then the next thing you know, the valves
Hmm.
are bad. But the thing is, this is a new brand high tech ship. So you can't tell me, but they did not do their job of overseeing the manufacturing. And what they try to do is put the blame on the manufacturer. I said, listen, I have no dealings with the manufacturer. It's your product, and you got to deal with your manufacturer. Don't come to me with excuses. I don't even know who the manufacturer is. I don't care to know who the manufacturer is. It's your product. You're going to be held responsible for it. But that's the way we dealt with them here in the United States. As a matter of
Right.
fact, and if they would go on a blacklist for not getting government contracts and that type of stuff. But in Guyana now they intimidate and they
Hmm.
go and it's just they just give they kind of running the country. They calling the shots.
I,
Uh,
I, I certainly agree. I certainly agree. I observed. I remember at the time when they took office. I'm talking about the PPP. Uh, it didn't take them very long to make it public that they intend to relieve you. Let me use a mild term. Relieve you
yeah,
of the responsibility. Um,
they
I
call it
have
officially
done some.
terminated. The word is officially terminated.
Well, I didn't want to use that. That might be too strong for them because the next thing you know, somebody might be coming saying, "Oh, he attacking the PvP." So, so you know, I I realized that there seems to be something that suggests that you probably were a peg or a pin in the skin of the proverbial skin of the people of Exxon or the group that is there, the limited liability company. And in my opinion, too, based on the research that I've done, maybe you were a pin in a cog in the wheel of the folk who seem to be direct beneficiaries of these bad faith deals, and that may have contributed to them saying, you know what, uh, let's relieve this because we know it's purely political. But I want to we're coming to the program time. I need to get you back another day to expand on the discussion. But
Sure.
I have to ask you a rude question, if you would permit me to, and then put you in a most uncomfortable position alongside that. Uh, you know, let me frame the question this way: what is your area of expertise and academic pursuit, and juxtapose that with that of your successor, if you don't mind, just so we have a clear picture of where our country is headed as it relates to the quality of leadership Guyanese taxpayers are paying for currently.
Okay. Um, I have my bachelor's degree is in civil engineering. As a matter of fact, I was in the first class of engineering graduates with degrees from with a bachelor's degree from the University of Ghana. I was in that class, the very first engineering class from the University of Ghana. And then I went on. I did a master's degree in groundwater hydrology. Because after I graduated from the University of Ghana, I went to work with the Ghana Water Authority. We were specifically trained, by the way, 12 engineers who were trained specifically to start the Ghana Water Authority, which is
Oh,
now
wow.
GWI, but it started.
Mhm.
So we were specifically trained to start up under the United Nations program. So even the UNDP brought in professors from University of Michigan, and they taught the program at UG. But the teachers and professors came from University of Michigan because they already had that program. Then I worked for Gaiwo, and then I did a master's, and then I went on to do was working on my PhD now in subsurface fluids engineering, which is petroleum, oil,
Mm.
gas, geothermal, anything the guys used to say anything that moves below the ground. That was my specialty. Um, and I was working on my PhD. I ended up not finishing my PhD. I finished my coursework, etc. Working on my dissertation, financial issues, and then the oil industry was booming.
Mm.
So I said, hey, you know what? I got my third kid. My wife got my son. I said, nah, it's time for me to get out there and make money. Demand was high, salary was high. So
Right.
I didn't finish my PhD. And the university said, hey, just in case you never come back to finish, here's a second master's degree. So I did get a master's degree more in petroleum reservoir engineering. So I specialize in petroleum reservoir engineering and geological. It's reservoir and geological engineering. And then when I was finished there, then the oil industry went down, and the Department of Energy, they were kind of, they really needed somebody. And I was in Texas at the time when I was working for Amoco, which is British Petroleum, by the way.
Hmm.
And they had, I didn't want to move from Texas, so the Department of Energy, they had some big project there, so they tried to get me on board. So that's how I went to work with the Department of Energy, and I ended up in the environmental department. So they said, hey, so I decided to go back to school and get my PhD in environmental engineering. So I've
Hmm.
got a kind of a unique background in geological, petroleum, environmental. I don't know of anybody who's got that kind of a mix. So I could
And the engineering itself.
and the engineering itself. So science, engineering,
Right.
and and I've been in charge of a lot of, well, the chairman of the international associations of engineers, and
Wow.
I've represented the United States, of course. I chaired two major international conferences, one in Germany, one in Kazakhstan, representing the United States. But I was chairman of with over 50 something countries that attended,
Mm.
science and engineering kind of conference. So that's the way. And now, obviously, I operated. I'm what's called a senior executive service employees in the United States. We're the highest ranking
Right.
government officials. We run the day-to-day operations of the nation. The political parties come in and leave, but we stay there. We take the same oath of office. Um, and so I've been working, running nuclear facility, the nuclear complexes across the country, cleaning up the nuclear weapons complexes in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Portsmouth, Ohio. Survive, all over the country where the Department of Energy exists. Even, we own, a lot of people here, the Department of Energy, we own the science hall. So we run all the national laboratories. We're all the
Mm.
major scientists, Albert Einstein and those folks passed through. So we also own all the sciences in the country. And we've got a big environmental program, of course, cleaning up the weapons complex, which I was responsible for. So that's my background. Now, I the current um, director. I don't, I
That's why I said I want to put it in an uncomfortable position.
yeah, yeah,
The juxtaposition, the
yeah,
juxtaposing part is the uncomfortable.
I was before that that information come from directly from from EPA.
I
but
understand.
but it was that experience, not only technical, that administrative experience that I brought to, that I intended to brought, and I came a long way into how it was organizing the EPA. As a matter of fact, even to become a senior executive official in the government, you had to go through like 2 years of training, going to various agencies. And two of my assignments during that period was to develop high performing organizations for the EPA, the US EPA.
Mhm.
When the new administration was threatening to outsource government jobs, yeah, every government department had to go to the White House and the Office of Management and Budget to prove to them that they can operate efficiently to compete with 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 private industry. If they hand it over to private industry, so I had to come up with these plans for two agencies. The EPA was one,
Mm.
in order for them to maintain a lot of their responsibilities. And lo and behold, it was accepted by the White House. So I gained a reputation as soon as I did that. Another agency asked me to do the same thing. But I had to reorganize the entire department, it was the Region 4 of the EPA, which was the all Southern EPA, and the other agency, the Legacy Management Agency. So it was that organizing and structuring ability and making it a highly efficient organization. That's the kind of experience and the technical skills that I brought to the EPA. And of course my international leadership, um,
Right.
with professionals and that type of stuff. At working at that higher level.
It's definitely sad to note that you know we our government. I mean, because we can't get rid of it. We Guyanese, Guyana belongs to all of us, and therefore whoever's in government there is our government, regardless of whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
The government of our country has, so many times you're proving that they're getting rid of the professionals, the required professionals, the duly qualified professionals, and replacing them with I don't know what, man. And that's the reason why I asked you to tell us that. But Doc, we have come up to program time. I definitely have to make way for another activity
Sure.
that is looming on or pending. And I definitely would be happy if we can continue this discourse sometime maybe in the coming week, because there are a whole lot more things that I would like to pick your brain on. So that, like I said in the beginning, many Guyanese don't know one thing about what these agencies do and what the people who run the agencies do in Guyana. So we've heard of what you were doing overseas and what you probably still are doing overseas, but we can get into a discussion that will enlighten us a little more on what you did while you were in Guyana for us as Guyanese to lift our standards and to protect us and see where we are now as we compare and
You know,
how much
just
safer we
to
are.
just to touch here a little bit. I know we run out of time, but the one thing that
Mhm.
I want you and the viewers here to go away with, probably I don't even have to say this, but I'm the one person that never made politics showed my judgment, because I was one of the biggest critics. All of my friends, even my friends in the coalition government, that criticized the agreement, etc. My good friend Raphael Trotman, we still remain good friends, but I was very critical publicly. Everything that I did when I was at EPA had no politician ever, like I said, interfered.
Mhm.
So I do not. Politics was not when I used to come back again. It was during, as a matter of fact, it was during the time of the PPP, and the former president, Mr. Ramatar, and I still remain friends. Ramsam and everybody, because I used to work with them on my medical
Okay.
mission. The education minister, Mr. Ramtar, even, and he and I would have some very frank discussions, because I would tell him exactly what I felt in terms of my advice to him for the country. It had nothing to do with politics. He didn't care about my political affiliation because he trusted my judgment. He was the one who started trying to get me to come back home even before I retired. So
Wow.
I do not use, have all of my judgment is what's best for Guyana, and
Hmm.
that's the way, it should be. The sad thing, what's happening in Guyana, and I was in a really an envy in I'm sure that the position that I was in, the other agency had warned, because the thing in Guyana is this culture of dependency. You have to have political connections, and you're afraid you cannot speak out, or else your job is going to be in jeopardy. Like what's
Hmm.
happening here with all the government agency head. Forget about myself, but look at all the others. All the other employees, where they were just willy nilly terminated for no particular reasons but politics, you know, and it's probably somebody who said something that was not in favor of, you know, and that's the kind of thing with the young professionals in Guyana. It's just if you've got to toe the line and go against your principles to say things to maintain your livelihood. That those are the kinds of things that has to stop if the country is going to move forward. People are going to have to, professionals especially, are going to have to be free to express their opinions based on their sound technical judgment for which they are trained, rather than towing the line to gain, political favor. I think I lost you there. I think I lost you.
Oh, my apologies.
Oh, there
Yeah,
you
I
is.
was muted. I was muted. My
I
apologies.
got you. Yeah,
I
yeah,
was saying that I am happy that you did say that, because I feel the same way. And I do recall when they terminated your service that I did a write up on Facebook. I did do a little write up on Facebook because I did research your background and all that. And I was looking at who they were thinking about replacing you with. And well, of course, they can't replace you. I was looking at who is they're gonna put to sit in that chair.
yeah.
And I realized that there was a little kind of cat and mouse game they were playing. They were saying we're going to replace it with another doctor who's more suitably qualified for that specific role, and we're going to put him in another role for which he's more qualified, and a whole set of semantics and all kinds of these fancy business. But I did say that Guyana cannot afford to be throwing away these professionals like that. I mean, those persons who are willing to give back to Guyana, regardless of political affiliation, are the ones that we should cherish, and we should make sure that we keep them and have them build us as a nation. I feel the same way. I have often said I do not criticize any government because of a want to criticism. If the PPP government does something good, like when they initially were in office and they thought about breaking down the whole eyesore that we had there for a hospital and rebuild this, replace the structure, I said it's a good idea, if only for the fact that we're getting rid of the eyesore. And then when I had cause to go to the hospital, I was hospitalized with an injury to my eye, a very severe injury that had I been asked to pay for the surgery the two surgeries that I had to do, it would have cost me in the millions of Guyana dollars to get it done. It was done free at the hospital, and I got the best of care in the I ward. So I complimented the government for
Right.
what they did then. But I don't believe that if you mess up, people should sit idly by and accept you're messing up and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, we gotta leave them because they're gonna squeeze us," or these. I mean, that is ludicrous. It's so sad that Guyana is coming to that, and
Yep.
like I said the other day, it seems as though that's the international pattern now. America, the Republicans are going down that road.
Yep.
The the unfortunately, um, Guyana's government, the party in government is going down that road, and so many other countries around the world that are influenced by the Russian society, I would call
Yep,
it, are going down that road. It's ridiculous and it's sad, you
yep,
know.
yep, yep,
But I'm so happy that we have uh, people of your caliber who are willing to give back, and I'm hoping and praying that you're given an opportunity to uh, serve again at the level that will benefit the nation.
yep, yep,
Because if the world could benefit from your service, why not Guyana? I am looking at somebody like Trevor Ben. Trevor Ben served internationally, and you bring him
yep,
back to give Guyana the service that he is
yep,
offering internationally, and then we just kick him aside and try and drag him through I like, what are we doing? Where are we going?
yep,
I don't understand it. You know.
yep.
But I look forward to having you back sometime next
Sure,
week, God's willing.
I'm
But I
welcome.
can't let you go unless I give you an opportunity to say what else impresses you to impart to us this morning.
Well, this year has always been my, as long as I breathe, I am gonna be on whatever forum I can or participate in whatever activity I am, as long as it's the benefit of Guyana and its people. I mean, everything that I got, and I see it, and I go all over. Even in the United States, I give speeches, especially in disadvantaged neighborhoods, etc.
Mhm.
And I tell people, hey, everything that I got, I grew up in, like I said, in the alleys of Christian Boer, where a whole lot wasn't expected from people of coming from such a background. But everything I got, it was from that neighborhood.
Mm.
That I was raised by that village, and to me, it's my turn to give back to the kids who want that opportunity. I never paid a dime for any of all this education I got. Never
Mm.
paid a single dime
Mm.
in Guyana or in the United States. No, not because I was brighter than everybody else, because I wasn't. But it was because of those people who showed me the way, who held my hands, make sure that I walked that, you know, along
Mhm.
that path, etc. So that's the reason why I commit myself as long as I have life in my body, regardless of whether I'm terminated or fired or what. Yeah, that's not going to stop me from giving back to my people in Guyana. That's not going to stop me. So this here is a forum that I can share. And the one thing that nobody has ever sold me short on is to speak my mind,
Okay.
regardless of, and again, and it's not clouded by my political, views, etc. Because a lot of things, when I agree with the government, if the government are doing things that I agree with, I say absolutely, sure. I've
Mhm.
agreed with them. The gas to shore stuff, even though it has to be vetted properly. I agree that we should have, a transition to renewables at some time in the future. I've agreed on that. I've agreed on the policy of maximum production of oil and gas, so that we can get that money to invest immediately,
Right.
because oil is only going to be here for 30 years. So I don't want it, let's get the money as far, but it's how do we spend it?
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
agree with a lot of things, except that I do not think that we've got the capabilities for that, put together that vision and plot a path forward as to how do we get there. And that's where people like myself, I'm just one example of what's in the diaspora, because I tell people all the time, I can find a member of the diaspora to fill any position and any need in Guyana whatsoever. You know,
Mhm.
we had what this so-called brain drain. We should be taking advantage of that brain drain and turn it into brain gain in
Yes.
Guyana,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
because we've got. You would not believe. Again, I am just one example. I've met Guyanese all over the world, especially in North America. People work at the highest level of banks, government, all over the place.
Yeah.
Professionals. Those are the people that we need to have come back, because we would go back because we're doing it from the heart.
Mhm.
You would not believe one of the things that I almost banned the EPA with this whole consultant. Everything is a consultant. And you go, you hire consultants, somebody put up a shingle someplace because they're coming from a foreign country, they were a different skin color. They only
Mhm.
got to say they're consultant, we hire them. Why not go get a Guyanese who's going to come because they're only coming for the money. They're going to cut and run when things. The Guyanese are coming, they want to come back home and help. Those are
Yeah.
the ones you need to go and get. They're coming and doing it what is right. But we've got to change that. But we can only do that if you have, if people really come to their senses and understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I forgot one little aspect that I had down there to ask you. I don't know if you have time to just give us in a
yeah,
nutshell.
yeah.
I observed that the EPA has served notice of a public hearing for a public hearing in the Suzak, who's covered in NDC area. What is that about? Because there might be people from the Suzak who's covered in, and even neighboring NDCs on the program who are watching, but they don't know what that forum is for, and whereas they could go and make a valuable input, for the want of knowledge, they may not go and deny the system the opportunity to hear from them. What is that about?
Well, and of course, I probably know as much as you have because I've been reading. I've been getting my information from reading the newspapers, etc. But within the last day or two, I've received several letters asking for my advice and input, etc. So I do not know the details of the plan, but we've got all of these springing up all over the place to service the oil industry. And of
Hmm.
course, there's a process at EPA. Matter of fact, that's one of the processes that I had implemented or started implementing, where we had a draft as to how do you go through this process of determining the level of evaluation this thing should have. Should it be an EIA? Because that's the question here. Should it be an environmental impact assessment, which is the thorough analysis, looking at the hazards, etc., putting in mitigative measures, or
Hmm.
should it just be an environmental, management plan, which is at a lower tier? So that was, as a matter of fact, that's exactly the process that I was one of the key processes that I was putting into place. Now I would have to look at the details
Hmm.
as to what the chemical is. I know they're even mentioning the radioactive sources, which now becomes serious because then you got to add security. How are they going to secure this radioactive source, etc. Now,
Wow.
so it's only within the last day or two that I've started receiving these inquiries and asking for my advice and input and stuff like that. But the most important part of this process, though, is what I see is the public has to be involved in these type of things. One of the biggest issue that I had at DP is that everybody wants to put everything around the Georgetown area. Georgetown
Hmm.
was not built for that to start with. You know, now you cannot go and try to rezone it when you've got all these built up areas. When I say Georgetown, I mean built even East Bank and every place else.
Right.
I was staring. I was staring people. I said, "Here, you need to go to those communities such as the mouth of the Essequibo River. They have some islands that are not occupied. Why
Right.
can't the government set up industrial complex? Just zone that off, or even
Hmm.
in the mouth of the Berbice River. Where it's not highly populated, etc. But everybody wants to be around Georgetown because everything is around Georgetown. And that I was staring developers. They came in. I remember one Chinese company. They even went and they were even looking at buying one of the islands out there to put a plant that they wanted to put out there. But
Okay.
so this year does not surprise me that we're gonna get a whole bunch of these coming in from Georgetown and East Bank and East Coast and those places where these companies wanted to set up shop. But the good thing is the public has got to be vigilant to make sure that they get involved and you just don't willy nilly putting down these complexes all over the place to the
So
detriment.
your advice to the folk in the Suzak who's covered in areas to ensure that they attend this forum
Without
and
question,
participate fully.
without question, no question at all. Or else that's the whole intent. You cannot want to complain and cry about it when you're not. Now, if you're having your input and they're ignoring it, that's something totally different. Then you even have grounds to take when you go take legal action. You say, here,
Mhm.
I have here's my input. They just ignored it. We're not following the process, etc. But you've got to go through that process. Even if you don't like the process, go through the process. Because the process, if you do not attend, I'm sitting there at the EPA, I'm going to say, hey, this is part of the process. I give you your opportunity. You writing stuff in the newspapers doesn't mean anything. It has no standing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come to the meeting, the meeting has to be documented. It's on record, etc. That's official documentation. You have to go to the meeting. And the other thing is EPA has to address every single comment at these meetings.
Oh,
Every
nice.
comment.
Nice.
They can say, hey, you know what? It doesn't, your comment doesn't have any validity. Well, they still don't have to give a reason why,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to address every single comment to these meetings. So you have to attend these meetings, and the more people can go to these meetings, the better.
The better. All right. So the reason why I had to ensure that I got that one in is because this meeting is scheduled for 4 p.m. on Monday the 10th. So those persons on the East Bank, even if you're not from the Soesdijk, who's covered in NDC, and some people might be looking at the spelling and asking how is it that he calling who's covered, and that's the pronunciation. It's a Dutch Dutch word. It's a Dutch name.
Well, here's some more information for me here. You didn't know I played cricket for Guyana, but here's another one. I've got roots at Soesdijk.
Oh yeah.
my mother is from Soesdijk.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
So I spent a lot of time in Soesdijk. I lived in Soesdijk for a little while. So I know Coverdale and Soesdijk very, very well. It's just a little trench or canal that divides Coverdale from Soesdijk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You might even know my first cousin, Michael Charles. He's the guy that flies the helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Michael, that's the Indian half of my family. He's my
Mm-hmm.
first cousin. Michael is my first cousin. Michael Charles.
Oh, well,
He
it's a
lives right
small
here
world.
today.
It's a small world.
But
Yeah,
that East Indian
I have
side
him
of
as a
that
Facebook
East Indian
friend, and I
half
would
of my
follow him with his postings when he goes around Guyana taking his shots and posting them on
that's
Facebook and so on.
that's
I
my
do
first
follow.
cousin. That's my
Okay,
first cousin.
nice. Well, I do advise that I do concur with your advice that those persons living in the Soesdijk who's covered in the area, along with those on the East Bank per se, if you have the opportunity and the time, just go sit in at the meeting. You can
That's right.
benefit. You will have an opportunity to voice your opinion because it's not just the Soesdijk. Whatever happens in Soesdijk has the potential to influence what happens on either
Absolutely.
side of Soesdijk, who's covered in the
Absolutely.
NDC.
And you set the tone because what people do not understand, this whole oil and gas thing, what you see here now is just the beginning. Imagine we're dealing with one ship operating off the shores of Guyana. Exxon alone, they're
Hmm.
planning to have 10 of those ships. 10.
What?
And it's not only going to be Exxon, there's all other companies, CJEC, there's people going to be bidding on other properties, etc. So this is just the beginning, and that is why you've got to put things in place now from the beginning to set the tone and pattern and all the laws and regulations. Because when things get out of control, you cannot put that genie back in the bottle.
Right.
So now
Right.
they've got Soesdijk has the opportunity right now to start setting the pattern where other places are going to follow, and where it gives the government the opportunity also to see what the issues are to address it early.
Yes.
So it's a benefit from both sides. It's a benefit from both sides.
Well, thank you very much for spending your time. We've been chatting here for approximately an hour and 32 minutes.
Yeah.
If we were asked to remunerate you for for time, I don't know how we would have made
Now,
out.
my price is cheap. My price is cheap.
All right, thank you very much. And like I said, I do look forward to having part two or round two of this discussion with you
That's
sometime
definitely.
next week. You
Yeah.
have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy the weather in Texas. I'll try to enjoy the weather here in New
No,
York.
I'm in Tennessee.
Oh, sorry, not what I'm saying. Texas, Tennessee. My apologies.
That's okay.
Enjoy
That
the
used
weather,
to be my home. That
and what
used to be my home.
we will ship some of our hip hop music your way, and you send some of the Tennessee music this way for us.
That's right.
Thank you very much, Doc. God's richest blessings to you and the family.
Same to you, Mansford.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
Take care.
Well, we want to say thank you very much to our guest, Dr. Vincent Adams. Indeed, it was a pleasure sitting down and having a gaff with him. And if I was a Londoner, I would have been having somebody come with a tape measure to put it around my head and see how much expansion was had occurred there. But I am not. I'm a Bartitian, but I can do the same thing because we're the Bartic and Linden are closely connected
That's right.
communities. So I am a very proud Guyanese. That's the most important thing. I'm proud of you, sir, and I wish that we had many more persons who are as qualified and prominent as you are, who are willing to make themselves available. And if we had a government that was willing to make use of those services. That's a wrap for us today on the In Perspective show. We look forward to meeting with you again on Monday morning. That's the viewers. You will have a wonderful day, have a wonderful weekend. God's richest blessings to you all. For now, this is Branford Burke saying tata bye bye, and until Monday, I'm out.
Take care, Branford.
Thank you very much, sir. You do the same.